And thank you for staying with us, folks. Our guest is the man with the plan. That's what I like to call him. He's Dr. Claud Anderson. It's the only person out there that's got a plan specifically for black folks. And let me just reiterate, just in case he forgets to mention, it's not about hating anybody else, but it's a plan through his Harvest Institute, which is directly will affect us and help us. So, Doc, I'm going to let you continue your story, because we're talking about what's exploding in Baltimore, in Milwaukee. And by the way, Trump is going to be speaking in Milwaukee. We'll get into that in a momentarily. But I want you to finish your point about us being in a race. And everybody else knows that we're in a race, but apparently our people don't know that.
Yeah, but they don't, and that is a mystery to me, how you can have almost 100% of all the whites in this country, and Asian, Arabs, Hispanic, everybody else, and blacks too, that don't understand what racism is. They just use the carte blanche to try to supplicate it, give the pretense that is similar to or is same as discrimination, prejudice, and bigotry and hatred. That's not racism. There's a difference. Everybody has a right to have a preference or be prejudiced. You have to be a prejudiced to be able to make decisions in the day-to-day interaction in this world. Everybody has a right to discriminate. If you can't discriminate, you can't tell the difference between things. Everybody is biased to some degree about things they want and prefer based on their previous experiences. But that is not racism. Racism, as I said, started in 1488 with Pope Innocent in Europe, when he decided that based on his previous experience with slaves in the Vatican from about 1448 all the way up to about 1488, that they were a good thing, and so that way, if you want to have a slave, use black folk. Prior to that time, throughout the history of the world, slavery was based on three things. One, was based on religious differences. Two, it was based on a personal indebtedness to an individual for monetary value. Or three, it was based on being a prisoner of war. Black people had never owed anybody anything, so it shouldn't have been based on indebtedness. Black folk were not into a religious conflict with anybody, and they were not a prisoner of war. They were not engaged in war. But what the Pope did was inject a new variable called skin color. And when that skin color, that was in about 1488, that skin color factor became actualized about 1494 when so-called Columbus came to America and discovered it. And then he went back to Europe. And when he got back to Europe, Europe was a decimated nation, a continent. It was undergoing all kinds. It was being criminalized. It had famine. It had diseases. Europe was in an extremely poor state. And the European continent was just about getting totally wiped off the face of the earth because of crime and diseases and famine and food shortages. But when they came back, Columbus said, "I found new land around the world, and we got to come up with a new concept. If we can use these blacks as slaves, as labor, then we got the land. We now got a new concept called capitalism." So capitalism came into existence about 1503 or 1505 in that general time frame. Capitalism means owning and controlling the tools, the land, the resources, and using other people's labor to enrich yourself. Again, capitalism is using the land, the tools, the resources, and other people's labor to enrich yourself. W.B. Du Bois defined capitalism in terms that maybe black folk have a better understanding of in about 1915. He says capitalism is like having 3 or 4 ears of corn. You eat, you save, you sell, and you plant the other seeds for the harvesting for the next year. That is capitalism. So all the European nations then got into a contest, a race. It says we're going to take this labor that we got from the African continent, and we're going to go and we're going to pick up labor for about $25 per person on a typical cost, and then we're going to take those bodies across the ocean to the United States, to America at that particular time, and we're going to try to capture that land and use them to create wealth and power in America. And that's what they call the American dream. The American dream came out of that because a race started. So 9 European nations got into a race saying we're going to develop the Americas, North America, South America, and Central America. I mean, that was Germany, French, Portuguese, Italy, Italians, Spain, Norway. All the European nations got into a contest, a race, R-A-C-E, to see who can get the most wealth and resources out of the Western world, out of the Americas, the North America, South America, and Latin American continent, to be able to take those continents and find all the minerals, the land, and use black labor to do it. That was a race. And they used it, and the Asians also got into the race later. But that was a race, a contest. And so from about the 1400s, 1500s, all the way up to about 1859, that was the race. By 1859, they had used black labor to build this continent, and they introduced blacks into Central America, South America, all throughout the Americas, and used their labor to enrich each one of those countries to send back wealth. And that's why Mexico was called New Spain. They introduced something like 3 or 4 million blacks into Mexico, and they shipped back something like $5 million worth of just gold and silver that went back overseas to enrich Spain. They used blacks to enrich themselves. And that race lasted up until about 1859. When 1859, just before the Civil War in 1860 started, the race ended. The race was over, because what had happened by 1860 was that in that 307-year time, from the 15 up to the 16, this nation had maldistributed almost 100% of all the nation's wealth, land, resources, privileges, businesses, income, and controls of all levels of government into the hands of the dominant white society. If the race was over by 1859, 1860, that was the end of it. And at that point in time, they took the E off of race, because everything had been maldistributed into the hands of the white society. They took the E off and stuck a suffix on it called ISM. ISM is a suffix, means maintain the prevailing conditions, let nothing change. And so by the 1859, 1860s, black folk were 1-foot midgets, and the dominant white society were 19 of 100-foot giants. Black folk owned and controlled nothing, zero, zilch. They could not compete, and the white society became predetermined that racism was a concept that says support nothing that would redistribute resources into the hands of this subordinated class of black folk. That's why whites began immediately to be against preferential treatment, redistribution of the resources, or affirmative action, anything that smells like an abuse to put something into the hands of black folk or correct the maldistribution in this country. Whites are adamantly opposed to it, and that's where the race concept came from. And I'm just stark amazed that I find no whites understand it. They'll look at a Hispanic and say it's racism to watch a Hispanic. Hispanic was a part of the enslaving class. The racism was between blacks and whites, and blacks and whites only. Those Hispanics are ethnic groups. Asians are ethnic groups. Hispanics are whites speaking Spanish. Arabs are whites. Asians are on probation to be white. The issue is racism. Racism is a system, contest between blacks and whites for either the redistribution of resources or to hold on to the resources you currently have in your hands.
Well, Doc, let me ask you this, because some whites now will say, well, I didn't enslave you. I didn't have anything to do with enslaving blacks. I wasn't part of slavery. Why should I be penalized just because I'm white? What do we say to them?
That's a good question. I hope he does raise that question, because what he did, he came in and got everything free. He's already been rewarded and benefited. Because every white that came in this country got rewarded and benefited. Whites came from all throughout Europe. They came here to get unearned benefits. That's what the American dream is. The American dream was promoted based on after the Constitution was ratified in 1789. The first nationalization law in 1790 says this is a white nation, that anybody could come here as whites in a ranking order of social acceptability, going from white and a skin color descendants, white, yellow, brown, black. Anybody come to this country can get benefits from the top to the bottom. The closer you are to whiteness, the more benefits you can get. And the first benefits we're going to start allocating will be land. And so that became the American dream, free land and free black labor. And that's why first thing George Washington did when they started writing the Constitution with Thomas Jefferson, George Washington got 100,000 acres of free land. Thomas Jefferson got 100,000 acres of free land. Patrick Henry, that was screaming about give me liberty and give me death, he got over 65,000 acres of free land. All those whites that came in, coming to America, they weren't coming here looking for no life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They came here for life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. The word was not happiness originally, it was property. That's how it was put into the Constitution, that black folk are property. They are 3/5 of a human being. And when the Constitution's first three words say, we the people, they weren't talking about black folk, they were talking about whites coming to America and getting all the free benefits. And the black folk were to be deprived and stripped of everything, because they're going to be classified as 3/5 of a human being. Property could not own property. They were going to get nothing. And consequently, as the immigrants, white immigrants poured in here, the same ones you're asking why are they paying, his ancestors came here and got free benefits. It's long overdue for them to pay black folk for what they got. Every white came to America after the colonies were set up. they had Homesteading Act and land grants. Every white could pick up approximately 640 acres of free land under the homesteading. 640 acres of free land.
Well, let me know and ask you this, Doc. What, if you say that to a white person, he says, well, my grandparents immigrated from Italy or from Ireland. He says, we didn't get what Patrick Henry and George Washington got. So what would your response be?
He got all the benefits of what black folks' labor, what they had produced. They got the benefits. See, black folk were the ones that they were the working class. They produced the benefits. That's why. Let's say if you want to jump to that point, and in addition to, let me before I leave up my land point. This is tremendously important about the land. Then I'm going to your point. So hold that point and ask me again in a second, because over the process of the land allocation, every white person got 640 acres, and then for every slave they owned, they got 150 acres of free land. And that's why and every railroad that started, we had 27 railroads start up. Every railroad got 6 miles of free land on each side of the railroad, all over the United States. And that was free land. They picked up over 24 million acres of free land. And when the last land rush across the Mississippi River, the Europeans that poured in here after the Civil War, in the 1880s, last land rush, all those whites poured into the United States. In 24 hours across the Mississippi River, they picked up over 2 million acres of free land.
Right. Hold that thought right there, Doc. We got to take another quick break. I'll let you finish on the other side. Folks, you too can join the discussion with Dr. Claud Anderson, the man with the plan. Reach out to us at 800-450-7876. We'll take your calls next on 1450 WOL, where information is power. And thanks for rolling with us and our guest, Dr. Claud Anderson. We like to call him the man with the plan. Dr. Anderson, before tell us why we're going to see more explosions of what we've seen in Milwaukee and what we saw in Baltimore. It's just going to continue because the subject that Dr. Francis Cress Welsing says nobody wants to talk about, and it's race, R-A-C-E. Doc, I'm going to let you continue your thoughts.
Okay. Now, as I said to you a few minutes ago, now the wealth of the land is a problem that you got. That's the first big problem. Because as I said a few minutes ago, once the last land rush, they picked up the Europeans that poured in here. You had over 30 million Europeans poured into this country between 1866 and 1896. 30 million immigrants coming from all over Europe, like you asked about Italy and France and Germany. They weren't coming here looking for no darn happiness. They were coming here to get unearned benefits. They weren't coming here looking for no hard work. If they wanted hard work, they could have stayed in Europe. They could have gone to the Russian salt mines, gone to place else they wanted to go. They wanted to work hard. They came here to get an easy life, to get a leisure life. They came here looking for free land and free labor. That was called the American Dream. And later on, it morphed into what we now call unearned benefits. They come here to get unearned benefits and get rights and freedom and privileges that the people that built the nation were always denied. So consequently, from the first the colonies in 1516 up until the late 1860s, this nation maldistributed almost 1 billion with a B, B-I-L-L-I-N. They gave away 1 billion acres of free land to the dominant white groups pouring into this country up and through the 1800s. From the 1500s to the 1800s, they gave away nearly 1 billion acres of land. That's extremely important because also in that land, they gave away all the timber that was on that land. They got the land free, they got the timber free, they got the bauxite, the chrome, the magnesium, the gold, the silver, the gas, and the oil on that land. They got it free. They didn't pay for it. You see all these people talking about, well, they want grazing land out west, these big wide farms out west, where you got whites out there with farmlands, 30,000 and 40,000 acres of land that's been passed down from one generation to the next. They didn't buy it; they got it free. Now here's the catch: out of all that land they got free, that it got locked into the white society. And all the gas and oil and rights and minerals on that land. And it's been passed down from one generation to the next. And every 20 years, it doubled or tripled in value. That's why whites now wound up controlling almost 100% of this nation's wealth. In 1860, on the eve of the Civil War, whites owned 98.5% of all the wealth. Blacks own 1/2 of 1% of the wealth of the nation because they never got into land. Black folk could not get 40 acres of the land. And so they had 1/2 of 1% of the wealth. That's exactly where they are now. 150 years later, nothing has changed. And all that wealth has been passed on and been locked into the white society. So to answer the question you asked about your Italian friend a few minutes ago, what he's doing is he's getting the benefits of everything that all the whites before him got free. and passed over into their society and their communities and their churches, their institutions and their banks and their communities and their businesses, and locked into stocks, bonds, inheritance, investment accounts, business accounts, and passed on for one generation to the next. So 87% of everything that whites got from the 1500s up until through the 1800s is now locked and frozen in the white society. Only 87% is locked and frozen. Only 13% is up for grabs. What that means is that every white child that's born in America can get 87% call of what he needs to compete and survive in our society. He can get it at birth because it's inside of his race, inside his community, inside his church, inside his university, inside his schools, and inside of his government. He can touch it anytime he wants to. Now you start talking, and that's when the race ended. Now the black kids, he is outside of it. He never was in the race because he was the race. He was the American dream, the land, because President Andrew Jackson says that black labor brings 75% of the value to the land. So the black person could not get in the land. He couldn't get 40 acres of land. He got nothing. So when slavery ended and the race ended, the black child or the black slaves, almost 5 million, were set free. They were set free homeless, without clothes, without land. They couldn't get into 40 acres of mule. They got nothing. They were given nothing. After over 360 years of working for nothing, they received nothing. They were set free and told to either root or die, root hog or die. And they had no land, no clothes, no food, no tools, no instrument, no education, no organization, no family, no religion, no history, no rights. And told to set free, so you go compete. How in the world can you, what did they have to compete with? What were they competing with, owning, controlling, with a zero? That's like an ant competing with an elephant. What are they going to compete against in a race? If you got a race based on strength and what you own and control, if you're the ant, you own and control nothing, you got a snowball's chance in hell of being able to win. And that's when so the race ended then. Now, since that time, not one effort has ever been made to redistribute some of these resources back into the hands of black people. Black people are still trying to compete in this country, owning, controlling 1/2 of 1% of anything of value. That's in Baltimore. That's in Boston. That's in Ferguson. That's in Milwaukee, Chicago. These black folk cannot compete and survive. They don't own and control anything of significance. And every white person in this country and every Asian Arab knows it. And under the immigration policy that was set up in 1790, this country has a nasty habit and using the immigration laws to bring people into this country, just as they did back during the colonial period in the 15 and 16, 17, 1800s. They bring people into this country and federalize them over black folk, and then put them in a position to compete against black folk. And
all right, let me interrupt you and ask you a question, Doc, before you get into the immigration issue too far. White folks will say, well, look at Michael Jordan, look at Oprah, look at Bob Johnson, look at Bill Cosby. They'll pick out LeBron. They'll pick out a bunch of black successful black millionaires and billionaires. What's the answer to that then? They're going to say they made it. Why can't you?
First of all, that's a joke. And if I were a black person, I would be insulted for somebody even bring that to my face. The wealthy blacks in this country, I can put them all in one cab and take them every place I want them. You got somewhere between 400 and 500 white billionaires in America. You got one black one. And you talk about in terms of millionaires, in proportional comparative term, I can take the wealthy blacks you got right now and compare them to where they were at the end of slavery. During slavery, we had blacks that were exceptional, had done extremely well. You only had about 280-some thousand blacks that were free, and about 4.5 million blacks were slaves up until the 1860s. But that 280-some thousand blacks, some of them had managed to be able to be exceptions. They'd gone out, they started their own little businesses. They were doing reasonably well. They had secured some land here and there, and they had a little business here and there. They had good jobs here and there. And why did they have it? Just like you talk about Michael Jordan and Bill Cosby and Oprah. They had it for two reasons. First of all, because on different instances, whites will take a black person and pull him close to his breast and squeeze and hug him and say, you are an exception, a special black, and I'm going to hold you as a model. And because of my love and affection for you as an individual, because I'm attracted to you and I like you as an individual, I'm going to allow you to be different and get something. You got others who always said that there should be blacks because some blacks are just different. But most importantly is that white racism, the race that I talked about a few minutes ago, white racism is not perfect. You're always going to have some blacks that are going to beat the system. That's why you have the few blacks that got a little bit of money. But it doesn't make any difference even if you did have a few blacks like the Michael Jordans and the Oprahs and the rest of them and the Jay-Z's that got money. It doesn't make any difference what those few blacks got out of 43 million black folk, because there's no connection between a black folk who beat the system and white folks allowed them to beat the system, and then because white was not perfect and they beat the system, there's no relation between them and the black masses in this country, because the money does not translate over into the black community. So the few black, wealthy blacks in this country, their money does nothing for the black race as a whole. They don't use it to help elevate their people. They don't do anything substantive. If they do invest any money in any activity that relates to black folk in this country, it'll be in something that's highly symbolic, that is symptomatic. Yes, they say, well, what we're going to do, we're going to spend our money on set up a school for girls in South Africa. How does that help blacks in America? Or what we're going to do, I'm going to go put my money into a basketball court someplace. Black folk in America are unlike the Jews and other groups. They do not translate their money back into their group and use that money to elevate the race as a whole. So it doesn't make any difference. So don't let people trick you about, well, you got a few blacks that did this and that. Those few blacks is like a gnat crawling up an elephant's rear end with the intent to rape it. It doesn't make any difference. It does nothing.
So why don't they put money back in the successful blacks? Why don't they reconnect with the rest of us?
Well, for two reasons. Primarily, the first reason is because most cases, how they got their money, they're restricted. In most cases, most of them initially are nothing but employees. They're employees of some major corporation or some major white-owned organization, and they got a code of conduct saying, if we elevate you and put you in the back of a cornflake box as a black athlete and a black actor and a black comedian and a black actor, you cannot identify or relate to or translate your resources and your personality into the black community. That is totally, absolutely forbidden. They cannot do that. Their money is controlled by white owners and white business people and white publicists that tell them over and over again, if we catch you doing anything where you're going out on a limb, using your personal persona or your resources to help black folk, we'll cut you off at the knees. That's the first thing. Secondly, is you got most of these athletes and entertainers and successful blacks, they don't really care. Their interest is strictly solely in their individual comfort. They falling into a same ditch that a lot of Jews fell into the 1930s in Europe. In 1930, you had a lot of Jews doing that when they found out that the Germans were going to commit the Holocaust, the final solution for Jews, but they're going to set up extermination camps around Europe, Poland, and different places, and Germany, so they're going to exterminate the Jews and round them up, put them in the gas chambers and furnaces. And what they did, they said, well, what we'll do is save those Jews who are artists and special Jews, entertainers, we'll save them for last.
All right, hold that thought right there, Doc. We got to take another look at the traffic in the DMV. I'll let you finish up talking about the comparison to what happened to the Jews. Folks, you too can join the discussion. 800-450-7876. We'll take your calls next. This big show rolls on from 1450 WOL, where information is power. And thank you for staying with us, folks. Just want to remind you, coming up in the next few days, David Banner is going to be here. David Banner, actor, rapper, and turned activist. Also, Dick Gregory is going to join us. He's going to talk about the death of Dr. Sabi, Milwaukee, and also Marcus Garvey. So tell your friends to keep it locked on 1450 WOL. Our guest right now is the man with the plan. That's what I like to call him, Dr. Claud Anderson. And what he's discussing is what Dr. Francis Creswellson talked about, the system of white supremacy. But Dr. Anderson lays it out in his book, Black Labor, White Wealth. If you try to figure out why anywhere on this planet that black people are, that we're at the bottom of the barrel, any metric that you use, whether it's high school dropout, teenage pregnancy, kidney disease, you name it, we're at the very, very bottom. There's a reason for it. This is what Dr. Anderson is trying to explain. And I know he won't have all the time to get into the book, but if you pick up that book, you'll understand what Dr. Anderson's saying. But his second book, Powernomics, is sort of a roadmap to tell us how to get out of there. I'm not sure if we have time to make it, but that's the second book called Powernomics. We'll talk about his books later. But Doc, I'm gonna let you continue your thought about Nazi Germany and the Jews.
Right. What I was saying to you, Carl, is that you were asking about the entertaining personalities or the high visible personalities in America why they don't do anything to help their own people. And they don't do it, as I said, because whites control their money and resources. Secondly, because they're scared and they don't control, and they think they'll lose something, and they're just simply selfish on the other hand. And they think that they're going to be saved and be the last ones. And they probably will be. But that's the same thing, that's a mistake that a lot of Jewish high visible personalities made back during World War II in the late 1930s when they began the Holocaust, or what they call the final solution for Jews. They started setting up extermination camps, gas chambers, and furnaces to start cooking Jews. And what they did, they saved a lot of the entertaining Jews for last. And they put them in some of the concentration camps as to be in orchestras and musicians to be able to play and entertain. And that was in there for a very specific purpose. They made enough music and noise and to cover up the moans and the sounds and the cry and the pains of those Jews that were being cooked and burned alive and gassed and shot, so nobody would hear their pains and suffering. So those Jews that were entertainers, they lasted longer than the regular Jews, but eventually they got their come up and said it before in the final analysis. And see, the same thing will probably wind up happening to some of our blacks in America that are very right now. They do not want to be associated with blacks, identified with them. You can go to any TV channel, Fox channel, anytime, and whites got a whole list of them. They can pull them out of the drawer and put them on TV on the Fox channel or on the NBC channel and say, hey, say something negative and downgrade and push blacks back into the hole or back to the bottom level by saying we should all be together. We should be loving everybody. We should not be trying to be in the race to try to come out first, second in the race. Rather, we should be loving the position we're in, even though we're at the bottom. We should all be you should be learning to be comfortable at the bottom and quit trying to move up the ladder. And so that is, and what blacks in this country are going to eventually start doing is that they're going to have to go back, Carl, and final response to your question. Blacks, in the final analysis, are going to have to go back and renegotiate their relationship with all these successful blacks in the country. That's what the Jews found out, the last thing. You got to go back and say to all these black actors, the black entertainers, they got 5 and 6 TV shows. They're talking about how many millions of dollars they make in a year on radio and TV and in the movies, and they're doing absolutely nothing for black folk. What black folk have to do is what the Jews did, and some of them began doing. And you're going to have to go back and say, look, if you don't start committing some of your resources and your time and the energy, your image, and go against the code and start doing something to help blacks in America while we're being wiped out in Baltimore and Milwaukee and Chicago and Detroit, then we're going to renegotiate our relationship. We're going to cease and desist in buying your music and going to your movies and going to your athletic events. We don't care if you don't care about us. We don't care about you. And that's one of the powernomics principles. I tell blacks all, do not under any circumstance support any individual or any group or any candidate or political party that won't support black people, period. You don't do it.
And the latest to join that club is Cam Newton. I used to like Cam Newton. He came out and just basically said there's no racism in America. I don't understand these guys when they make it. Is there a code or something that you got to say, Doc, when you make it? After you've made so much money and they figure you're influential, what is it? Once you make it, they tell you you've got to act a certain way. You've got to, we saw it with Wendy Williams the other day putting down blacks. Steve Harvey did the same thing. Are you supposed to do that when you make it, or they just do it out of their own volition?
Yeah, that's exactly what they got you on to do, because they know that black folk are very compromising, acquiescing blacks, and that they will never raise the issue over anything. They are long suffering. That's why black folk weren't picked for slavery by accident, Carl. They were chosen intentionally because they knew that they were very compliant. Where any other group, see, slavery, Carl, be honest, let me cut to the chase. Black folk could have ended slavery in this country in a matter of months if they just simply said to themselves, we're not going to do it. We're going to do it. I would die before I let you enslave me, rape my wife, my children, my daughter, cut me off, no education, cut my feet off, make me work 6 days a week, 12 hours a day for no pay for 500 years. No, I ain't going for it. And especially in the South, where blacks outnumbered whites in the South 4-1. But see, black folk, whites know right now that the worst thing black folk would ever do is go out and do a riot in their own neighborhood, burn down stores, march from New York to Washington, D.C., march all over the country. Nobody cares about black folk marching. That does not hurt or injure any whites. That takes nothing out of white folks' pockets. Everything in our country is economic based, and economics controls the politics. If you're not going to do something that takes money out of people and doesn't have an economic impact, it makes no difference. If you started withholding patronage not only of some of your black people who won't identify with you, you started withholding your patronage from all these soda, from all these, like the soda and the food that's advertised on these radios. You got the Rush Limbaughs and the Bill Rileys, and you got companies advertising, buying time on those TV stations. That black folks started saying, if I catch Bill O'Reilly and Rush Limbaugh and Hannity talking, saying all this negative stuff about black folk, we're gonna have consumer withdrawal all over this country, where we're gonna start boycotting those products that are advertised on their stations. And you mean it. But to do it, you got to first go back and take up some of the power-nomic things I've been telling you about. You got to go back and rebuild your own communities. You got to go back and cease and desist in being consumers. And it might be painful a little while when you start cutting them off. But you go back and rebuild your own communities. And in your own communities, you start building your own businesses and producing your own products, services, and goods. Start practicing group economics or geopolitics or geoeconomics in your own communities. Buy from your own people and follow the general rules in economics. In general rules in economics says, for instance, Hispanic money bounces 6 to 7 times before it leaves Mexican town, in Little Hialeah, Little Havana. White money bounces 8 to 12 times before it leaves the white community in a rural area. It doesn't come to the black community. It goes around and around in the white community, 8 to 12 times. Arab and Asian money bounces 12 to 13 times in their own communities in Dearborn, Michigan, and in Chinatown, Poletown, Hockeytown, Corktown, Greektown, Mexican town. That money bounces. And Jewish money bounces 18 times. Black money does not bounce once because we are silly enough to keep going and spending our money with any and everybody and demanding nothing in return in buying a product from them. We do the same thing in politics. We go and vote for anybody, any candidate for office, whether it's a Democrat or Republican, and we never demand anything in return for our vote. Nobody on earth is supposed to be that silly. It violates the whole premise of politics. Politics is based on a very simple premise: quid pro quo. Quid pro quo. Something for something. One hand washes the other. If you scratch my back, I scratch yours. We live in a nation of representative government, which means that if you vote for somebody and put them in office, they're supposed to represent you. And right now in this political race for the President of the United States, what has the Democratic Party, or what has the Republican Party, or what has Hillary or Donald Trump promised to black folk? Never in the history of this nation, in almost 500 years, has any political candidate, a political party, ever promised anything to black folk and delivered specifically to black folk. Never. Because we're the only group that demand nothing. You go out there and do it. It is foolish and it's stupid. That's why you cannot change and redistribute these resources. That's why you cannot eradicate racism. That's why blacks are non-competitive. That's why you've never won a race and never got a score on the board or never won a contest.
Well, Don, before I take some calls, let me ask you this. Since we're talking about the political race now, for those who just joined us, Donald Trump is in Milwaukee this evening. He's going to speak there. We're not sure if he's going to speak to our community or he's going to speak to the cops, because you know how the sheriff rolls in Milwaukee. But, Dr. Anderson, what do we do? What do we do with the folks who are doing the bidding of Hillary? He's got a bunch of them now who want to come on the radio. I'll tell you right now. And you can't hear from them. She won't advertise, but they want to come on and tell our audience to vote for Hillary. So I've been holding them at bay for a while, but what do we say to them? And these are elected members of Congress.
They can vote for Hillary. That's not a problem. Hillary might be the best candidate. And then on the other hand,
yeah, but they're trying to tell us to vote. They're going to come on and try to tell the audience why they should vote for Hillary.
That's right. They better come on and tell them something. And if they start talking about what Hillary is going to do or what Donald Trump will do for everybody, black folks need to get up and walk out of the room. Black folk are the only people that's been denied resources. The problems that were caused by 450 years of slavery and Jim Crow segregation has never been addressed, never been corrected. What are those candidates going to do in tangible, measurable terms? I don't mean what they're going to do about in symbolic, intangible sense about saying, well, if I get elected to office, I'll give you a Martin Luther King's birthday. Martin Luther King's birthday doesn't put one biscuit on a black person's table. Or what I'll do is I would name a street after Rosa Parks, or I'll hire a black secretary. We don't want that stuff anymore. Black folk must change the construct that was set up following the Constitution and the maldistribution of all the resources in this country in the hands. Black folk do not own and control a sufficient amount of anything to be a competitive people. And after this election is over, when they bring in all the rest of these immigrants to this country, and they give citizenship to the 14 to 20 million Hispanics right now waiting for citizenship. They bring in and Hillary's talking about bringing in somewhere between 100,000 and 300,000 Arabs in this country. That is black folks' funeral. Black folk haven't got a snowball's chance of hell of being able to survive. I don't care who the candidate is, unless they do the things that I tell you in my book. If you're going to support Hillary, you tell them, well, I'll support you, but you must lay down what you're going to do specifically and solely for black folk. Don't tell me about what you're going to do for minorities. I don't want to hear about your women's agenda. I don't want to hear about the poor folk, people of color. I don't want you to hear about midgets and people with ingrown toenails and hemorrhoids. What are you going to do for black folk? That is the key. That has never been done. And I have the dubious honor of probably being the only black in America that has been a campaign manager, not been in a campaign. I'm the only black in the history of this nation that has been a campaign manager for governors, for presidents, for attorney generals, for state legislators, for congressmen, and mayors. No other black can make that statement. I know politics extremely well. Our people right now, you got a few superficial people that have been teaching college and taught a few courses in politics and history, and now they think they know everything about politics. They violate all the rules of politics. Black folk must say, black folk have never been promised anything. They've been promised nothing, and they've always got nothing. You got a president right now sitting up there. He has promised black folk nothing. And from the day over the last 10 years of campaigning and in the office, and even when he was in the state legislature in Illinois, he has never promised black folk anything. And I guarantee you, when he leaves office in January, black folk would not have received one single solitary thing from him. And don't be so naive to think that because somebody that he did something for the general society to help black folk, somebody will say, well, Dr. Anderson, we got more money for the school system, and then he put money into, and all elected officials put money into the Democratic Party, put money into improving the highways and the bridges and the water system. That doesn't mean a damn thing for black folk. And when black folk were enslaved for 360 years, people were improving the bridges, the highways, and the roads. They were putting money into the school system.
Right. Hold that thought, Doc. We're going to take a break here right at the top of the hour. I'll let you finish on the other side. Then we'll take some calls for you at 800-450-7876 to speak to Dr. Claud Anderson. Your calls are next on 1450 WOL, where information is power. And thank you for staying with us. Our guest is Dr. Claud Anderson. We were talking about the problems in Milwaukee and Baltimore, and Dr. Anderson says the problem is they're going to explode again because we're not tackling the real issue. It's not just we need more jobs and we've got to be more loving. We've got to get to the root of the issue, RACE. That's what Dr. Francis Wilson talked about too, but nobody wants to discuss it. Dr. Anderson has laid it out in his two books, Black Labor, White Wealth. That tells you how we got into the situation we're in. And right now, just in case you don't know and was curious, any metric that you use to measure, we're at the bottom of the barrel anywhere, not just in the United States, but on the continent, in the Caribbean, in Europe. We're at the very bottom, whether it be high school dropouts, teenage pregnancies, lung disease, whatever. We're at the very bottom. There's a reason for that. That book lays it out. His second book, Powernomics, tells us how to get out, how to move up that socio-economic ladder. So, folks, you need to have those books in your possession. You need to, when you read them too, you got to take action. Just don't read it and sit on it. You got to tell folks who you know, and you've got to take the action yourself so we can all practice group economics and lift ourselves up. But, Doc, I'm going to let you finish up what you were saying before we left for the break, and then we'll take some calls for you.
I'm not sure what I was saying when it cut off, but let me pinpoint what you just left. Is that people that want to acquire those books, Black Labor, White Wealth, that takes black folks through 1,400 years of history at about 200 miles an hour, show them every trick, every technique, every custom, every law, and timelines that show you exactly how all the wealth and resources got maldistributed and how blacks got locked into the lowest level of a real-life monopoly game that was used, and the United States Constitution is the one that tricked you into it and got you locked into it, and the United States Supreme Court is the one trying their best to keep you in it. You haven't got a snowball's chance of playing this game and winning unless you go back and start focusing, first of all, on correcting the maldistribution that went on for about 400 years in this country, where blacks never owned or had a pot for when to throw it out of. And that's where Powernomics picks up. Powernomics says that racism is not perfect. It can't be beaten if you learn how to play the game. And that it lays out how you go about doing it and getting a little bit of wealth and resources into your hand so you can not only compete with white society, and by competing, that doesn't mean being hateful. See, just like the Washington Redskin competes against the Dallas Cowboys. You don't hate the Dallas Cowboys, you just compete against them. Black folk must learn how to compete against the white society, these and the Arabs, the Asians, the Hispanics, and American Indians, and the gays and the women, and all those people are classified in a special category that are competing against black folk. They are fabricated minorities that are displacing you and taking the food off your table.
All right, Dr. Anderson should know because he wrote the first affirmative action measure. Was it in Miami? I know it was in Florida somewhere.
The first affirmative action plan was written is the United States Constitution that was written by Thomas Jefferson. I wrote the second one in 1970. I wrote it for the state of Florida. That was authorized by the governor and also approved by the state cabinet system. And it went all over the country. But I did not write that affirmative action plan for minorities and poor folk and multicultural and diversity. I wrote it strictly for black folk because I'm definitely determined to try to eradicate racism in our society and correct these racial problems. You cannot correct the racial problems in this country unless you identify blacks very specifically and try to reverse the conditions put on them. They identified blacks very specifically to enslave them. You got to reverse them, identify them very specifically to bring them out of this semi-slavery or these legacies that they are locked into right now in our society, where they're non-competitive, and cease and desist in bringing in all these immigrants and these fabricated groups of minorities and giving them resources and rights over black folk.
800-450-7876. Take a call, line 2. Joshua is calling from Washington, D.C. Joshua, you're on with Dr. Anderson.
Hello, Carl and Dr. Claud.
Yes, sir.
Have anyone spoke to you about teaching this stuff to the young black American and even older black American? Because this stuff is not taught in our history classes, in school, or anything like this.
Repeat what he asked me. I couldn't hear him that clearly, Carl.
Yeah, he wanted to know if anybody's approached you to teaching what we're talking about to adults and to our children.
There are a few people that were interested. Like one, I guess, Dr. Cosby down in Louisville, Kentucky, about 2 weeks ago. He's just trying to figure out through Simmons College, just trying to do it. I have a few blacks around the country that are very interested. Fred Price in California, a few ministers like him, and Earl Trent here, Maxine Waters in the Congress. But right now, most of them are under an order to stay away from the black issues in this country. Nobody wants to help black people. That is a definite no-no. And I guess I'm foolish enough. I guess I'm about the only one in the country that's no longer in politics that's foolish enough to go out and say, I'm going to try to solve the racial problem based on the causes of the racial problem, which is the maldistribution of wealth and resources. That black folk now, and it has been lowered at the lowest level of a real-life monopoly game, at the bottom of the barrel. And the worst thing about it is that you add insult to injury by keep going around pretending that all people are equal in this country and the development of this land. The worst thing, the most insulting thing that can happen in this country is going on right now, where you got politicians in all the parties pretending that somehow that all people in America have contributed equally to the development of this land. Like the question you asked me about the Italian, that is the biggest lie they ever told. When black folk were enslaved for 360 years, they were the ones they were the backbone of society. And when you pretend that all people have contributed equally, that's a lie. Black folk built the bridges and cleared the land. They built all these government buildings and all on the east. All those lands, those buildings were built by black folk. They built the buildings, they built the land, they built the canals, they built the bridges. They were the people that worked in the factories, in the textile mills. They worked in the mine, the coal mines. They built it, and all the other people came in and got free, unearned rides.
All right, and we're going to get Doc's going to give out his information before he leaves, and if you don't get it, I know some folks are driving, getting home from work. Kiana will have the information. Just call her up later. 800-450.
I know. Carl, let me tell them how to get the books and stuff.
Okay,
right
go ahead.
Okay, they want to get the books in those books that you were talking about, Black Labor, White Wealth. They can get that, and which is the Bible, known as the second Bible around the world for black folk, or they can get the Powernomics book, or they can get the two Dirty Little Secrets book, Dirty Little Secrets 1 and more Dirty Little Secrets. They can get all four of those books for $70 on a Power Pack. You get them on a Power Pack special by calling the corporate Powernomics office in Washington, D.C., or in Maryland. They call that office at 301-564-6075. Again, 301-564-6075, and they can order directly, or they can go to the Powernomics website. That's Powernomics, Powernomics, PowernomicsCorporation.com, and they can order the Power Packs and all those books off the website. And these books are unlike any other books that's been written in the history of this nation by blacks or whites. No books on earth are like these books that you got now in this Power Pack. And if you don't have these books in your library, in your house, you don't have a house, you don't have a library.
I agree with that. You've got to read these books, folks. I had a tweet question about the books, Powernomics. The person wanted to know, can we solve the situations by ourselves, or do we have to always have a group of us?
By a group, are you talking about a group outside your race or a group within your race?
I think the person means a group within our race. Can you individually, if I read Powernomics, I think this is what, if I'm not, tweet me back and school me. But I think what they're saying, can a black individual solve the problem by themselves, individually, by practicing Powernomics?
Well, no, well, not totally. You can't do it by yourself because, see, wealth and power does not radiate from one single individual. See, wealth and power is a group-based concept. Racism is a group-based concept. You cannot be a racist as an individual. You can only be a racist if you're attached to or associated with or a member of the group that owns and controls all the resources. And that's one thing they keep talking about that black folks don't understand. And I can't figure out why they don't understand it. A black person cannot be a racist because he doesn't belong to the group that owns and controls the power and resources. You cannot shut other people down, enslave them, Jim Crow segregate them, tell them who they can marry and where they can go. The only people that can be a racist right now are the people that own and control all the money and resources. And the same thing is true when black folks started coming together. Wealth and power comes from the group. Jews in this country are wealthy and powerful not because of what one Jew owns, but because what Jews own collectively. The same thing must be true for black folk. If black folk want to get wealth and power, they got to come together as a group. Now how big the group is get it as large as you can and keep multiplying it and expanding it. In other words, if a black person bought those books, as an example, and they started buying these DVDs and took them to their home and invited all their friends over, as many as they could, they only gave us 10 or 20 or 30 in their house, and they started showing the DVDs and serving them iced tea or lemonade or Coke, and said, watch these things and start understanding these Powernomics principles on how you're going to beat the game of racism. Racism is not perfect. And then that's the first thing you do. Once you understand the problem, the nature of the real problem in society, which is not unemployment, teenage pregnancy, or teen crime, or in those in dysfunctional schools. Those are symptoms of your problem. Your problem is that you do not own and control anything in the power and businesses. Now, once you get those things down pat, then you try to find you a community. Find 3 or 4 blacks who want to go into businesses. Build you a black community. Right now, you have no black communities. You do not have not one single solitary black community in the entire United States. Black people are the only people in America that do not have any communities. All we got are neighborhoods. A neighborhood is where you eat and sleep. A neighborhood is like a bucket with holes in it. We do not have communities. A community, to have it qualify as a community, you must have a neighborhood, if you want to start there, that has one. It has a wholly independent economic structure, an economy where black folk have businesses where they can produce jobs, shops, products, goods, service, a sense of protection, store their history, their culture, their values inside their own community. That's the first element you must have a community. Secondly, you must have a code of conduct that tells you how you treat each other, buy from each other, support each other, and put a priority on your own people. That's the third thing to have a community. You must have elected officials that will represent you first and foremost. Rather than having all these blacks get elected to public office and whatnot, they represent all the people. Nobody elects a black person to get into office and represent all the people. They represent the people who put them into office. So we have to build a community, then start producing jobs and services and goods for your people. Then focus on those key things that you must have in the next few years. And I can give you all kind of business because black folk need everything that whites need and other groups need. But right now, it's going to be absolutely essential.
Hang on a sec, Doc. We got to take our last look at the traffic and weather in the DMV. And then we'll take some calls to you at 800-450-7876 right here on 1450 WOL, where information is power. And thanks for rolling with us. And our guest, Dr. Claud Anderson. I call him the man with a plan because he's the only one who's got a plan for black folks, strictly for black folks. He's not being racist. But as he won't say, but I'll tell you, he's not being racist. He just wants to help black folks. Everybody else seems to have a leg up on this situation except us. Doc, I'm going to let you continue what you were saying from Powernomics, the book Powernomics, what we can do to survive in this race.
Right. Okay, Powernomics then will tell you pick up where black labor, white wealth left off. It shows you systematically going from chapter 1 all the way through to chapter 8, things that you need to do and put in place to start playing as a team and showing that wealth and power is distributed vertically and not horizontally. People always talk about we want to get along with everybody else. That's horizontal stuff. You want to go vertical. It's whites at the top control everything, blacks at the bottom control nothing. And all the achievements of people in this country kind of follow that same line. If you watch your achievement level, whether it's in education, those at the top, the whites will have the highest academic achievement, blacks at the bottom are going to have the lowest. Even Hispanics come to this country, since they are brown, classified as being brown, everything they do will be over black folk. The Asians will be in second. Everything you do in social economics will follow that descending order that was set up back in 1790. It's not going to change. It's not going to change until you change and redistribute the resources in the hands of black folk. Power numbers to show you how to do it. And as I said earlier, as you said a few minutes ago, I'm not into anyism. I want to eradicate racism. And that I'm not into racism, not into Confucianism or Catholicism or Hinduism or Islamism or Protestantism or Buddhism. Only ism I'm into is blackism and owism. At my age, I'm sick and tired of black folk being on the bottom, being mistreated by everybody, and our public policies that keep bringing in people over black folk and creating all these fabricated groups like women, pretending somehow that women have been deprived and that women are in a protected class. Women, whatever issue, the women issue in this country is basically between the white woman and the white man. White women have always co-owned, co-controlled, influenced, and inherited 100% of everything the white man has. If she wants more, she should get it from him and quit allowing herself to be put in a minority bag and go into affirmative action competing against black folk. But see, right now there's a lot of game playing going on. Black folk need to get away from all that stuff, and they're going to try to put not only women in a protected class, they put American Indians in a protected class. They're trying to put transsexuals into a protected class. Blacks should be put into a protected class. That's what I'm demanding. Our public policy must put blacks into a protected class, just like they were for a year and a half back in 1866. They should be protected. They don't have the resources, the wealth, and power to be able to compete in this race, this contest. Racism is a contest. Black folk do not have enough power to compete, and black folk need to quit looking for equality and equal opportunity in a contest. And the whole point of a contest or a race is not to make everybody equal. It is designed to make all people unequal, to have some people coming in first and some coming in last. We come in last because we spend all our time trying to worry about who else is in the race rather than getting out ahead and running as fast as they can, Carl, to win.
All right, 800-450-7876. Fixico is calling us from Los Angeles. Fixico, you're on with Dr. Anderson.
Greetings, Brother Carl Nelson and Dr. Claud Anderson. Thank you, Dr. Anderson, for all that you do. I am the great-grandson of Oklahoma Seminole Nation band leader Caesar Bruner, and some years ago I submitted a letter through my Congresswoman Maxine Waters to the White House requesting that you be made the Commissioner for the Bureau of Black Indian Affairs and that Dr. Angela Mollett be made your assistant. Dr. Anderson, will you please educate the listening audience about Port Negro since you've been there? I'll be going, and I'll take your answer off the air. Thank you.
Okay, do you want me to do that, Carl?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, well, see, what most people understand that slavery could not have existed again. First of all, because the black folk, as soon as they got here, as simply said, I'm not going to go for it. I'm going to sit down on my rear end. You might have to kill me and lose your money, that $25 you invested in me, but you're not going to enslave me and mistreat my family, my wife, my children, do all these kind of things for 500 years. And then if you do try to do it, you're going to catch holy hell. I'm going to try to if you kill me, I'm going to try to take you with me. Blacks could have ended slavery way back during the slave period. But also, what else kept? Because they failed to do it. Because they wanted to just get along, even they felt God would make a way, even if they've been enslaved for 500 years. But Indians also played a major role in enslaving black folks. Slavery could not have existed without the Indian tribes in this country. Most people don't know that Indians, in proportional comparative terms, owned as many slaves as white folk did. Now, the first slave treaty back in 1516, the New York Treaty, stipulated that Indians were to side with white folk in this country, and they can get clothing and food and weapons if they sided with the whites. And then whites would also pay them $25 to bring back every slave that ran away and bring him back to his master. And if they could not bring him back alive, they brought him back. They brought back his ears and his scalp. They would get $20. And so in all the tribes, they told the tribes, what you need to do so you will no longer be colluded as savages is to get you a piece of land, get the land cleared, get you some slaves, and treat the black folks just the way whites are going to treat them. And then if you do that, we will call you civilized. And so what they did, they set up the 5 civilized tribes: Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians. And that's where you get for the 5 civilized. That's why they call it the civilized tribe. They own slaves. They own slaves all the way from the 1500s all the way up to the Civil War. And the Civil War came. They then sign agreements with the Southern Confederacy to support slavery and to hold slaves and to fight with the South. And they fought with the South, and they lost, just like the South did. But what the Indians didn't know is that every treaty also included a passage that says if you take up arms against the United States, you will lose all rights and privileges and land. And so Indians lost everything because all these tribes lost everything because they sided with the South to keep blacks enslaved. But after the Civil War was over, some of the tribes were still holding black slaves, and so the government had to send government contingencies into every area in all Indian territories to meet with the Indian chiefs and have them draw up contracts, treaties called the 1866 Civilized Tribe Indian Treaties. And those treaties stipulate why, because the Choctaw and Chickasaw Indians were still holding 12,000 and 16,000 blacks as slaves, even in 1866, 2 years after the Civil War was over. And so those tribes, they were told that you sign these treaties, and a treaty is a law. A treaty is the highest law in the land. You sign these treaties, and here's what you must do once you sign these treaties as Indians. You must turn or loose all your slaves, point 1. Point 2, once you turn all these slaves loose, you must then give them a right to join any of the tribes they want to. Point 3, you must turn or loose and pay every free black or black Indian and freedman black, you must pay them minimally $150 which we'll give you. And the Choctaw and Chickasaw, government gave them $150,000 to split with black folks. Point 4, you must have these blacks participate in any elections pertaining on the reservation. Blacks must vote on any issue pertaining to Indians. Point 5, that black folk must be treated, black freedmen and black Indians must be treated in all manners similar to Indians on those reservations, which means they should be able to go to any Indian reservation and have access to resources on those reservations: the land, the gold, the silver, the chrome. Point 6, that black folks should be exempt from taxes. Those black freedmen and black Indians should be exempt from taxes just like Indians are exempt from paying taxes. Point 7, that those black freedmen and black Indians should also be able to go to any university school and get it free, to have free tuition, not have to be paying going to college. And point 8, that they should be able to contract with the government and go to the government and say, we want radio station license, we want TV license, a cable system license, and we have no intention of paying for them. You keep giving all these licenses, radio stations and free license to Indians, and we want the same thing. We want radio license, TV license, because black folks don't have enough money to be able to buy a radio station license, TV license. That's why J.P. Morgan and all of them, they got all the free licenses. The biggest radio stations in the country and TV stations were given to whites. Whites didn't buy them. The government gave them to them. That's why all these 100,000-watt stations like ABC and NBC, they did not pay for those things. They got them free, just like they got all the land in the country free. And now black folk can't own radio stations because they don't have the money to be able to go out and pay hundreds of millions of dollars for a damn radio station. And point 8 or point 9, black folk, those black freemen and black Indians should have the right to go and federalize land and also set up gambling casinos just like the American Indians. But what has happened, though, is that consistently nobody has followed through on this. So the Harvest Institute Freedmen Federation has filed a lawsuit over 10 years ago in the courts demanding that the United States government honor those treaties and treat black folk in all manners similar to the way they treat the American Indians. And they have not done it yet. We've been fighting in courts, and every time we go a foot inch forward, they try to push us back. We go back. We make 1 inch, then we go up another inch, and they push us back maybe an inch. We've been fighting on courts. And what all of our white politicians say is that Dr. Anson, it's so slow for you to get these resources, that the government owes black folk in this country hundreds of billions of dollars. The reason you're not getting them is because it's a political issue and not a legal issue. They got you all going into the courts. I filed lawsuits in the federal claims court, small claims court, and the appeals court, in the Sixth Circuit Court, and in the United States Supreme Court, trying to get these resources black. and they keep jacking us around. But the great irony, though, is this: is about 2 weeks ago, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, that from the Department of Justice, attorneys talked to our attorneys and said, "Look, I think we could reach some kind of settlement to help you with these resources, reach some kind of settlement to help you." But we have to go back and see, get it cleared with our superiors in the Department of Justice, where you got a black woman as the Attorney General, and Obama, who sits there as the president. Then they called back about 2 weeks later, a week or so later, saying that they talked to their superior in the Department of Justice and the White House administration. They said, "Don't do anything pertaining to black folk," and so they killed that effort. So we're still in the courts. But I thought it was quite ironic that you got a black Attorney General for the United States, a black president, and a black man sitting in the United States Supreme Court, and that they would give benefits to Indians in here based on the 1866 treaty, which is the only valid treaty. It's the foundational treaty for anything that Indians get in this country.
Hold that thought right there, Doc. I'll let you finish on the other side. 800-450-7876 to speak to Dr. Anderson. Calls next on 1450. WOL, where information is power. Thanks for staying with us and our guest, Dr. Claud Anderson, the man with a plan. Again, most of the stuff that you hear Dr. Anderson talk about during these best-selling books, Black Labor, White Wealth, which tells us how we got into the situation that we're in right now across the planet as a black person, and Powernomics, which tells us how to get out of the situation. So, Doc, I'm going to let you finish up what you were saying, and then we'll speak to Alberta in Atlanta.
Right. Okay, and what I was saying is that it's ironic that we have a black person in the Supreme Court, a black person as the Attorney General for the United States in the federal level, and we got a black president of the United States, and we got all these about 44 black congressmen, and not one of them seem to have any interest in trying to give black folk their basic entitlements. But by the same token, they'll go out of their way and bend over backwards to use the same treaty that was put in place for black folk and give benefits to Indians. As a matter of fact, in the last 7 years, that the White House has called 564 white so-called Indian chiefs to the White House and given them $3.5 billion every year, which now comes close to $20 billion in the last 8 to 9 years, and yet they have not invited not one black Indian there or so-called black freeman there to give them 1 penny. And last year also they got many free radio licenses and TV licenses they wanted, and that's very sad when you got that much black representation and get no results. That's why a white congressman from West Virginia and a white congressman from Memphis, Tennessee, Congressman Cohen, he says, Dr. Anderson, he says, your problem is that your people don't understand, and you can't get anything until you get some black leadership in America, either from the civil rights organization or your elected officials, to stand up and say, these are things or entitlements that black folks should have been getting for 100-some years, and nobody would stand up and say, go in and deliver them to them. And that is a very sad indictment of black folk in America when you have no leadership and nobody wants to do anything for black folk. And to be perfectly candid with you, I've gone up on the Hill a number of occasions, besides having the lawsuits, filing lawsuits, and personally spending hundreds of thousands of dollars out of my own money fighting for black folk into the courts, paying the bills. I pay the bills for the legal costs, trying to say you cannot eliminate racism until you start dealing with it. And yet, not one black congressman, only black congressman that's come out to support us so far has been Maxine Waters. She's gone with me 2 or 3 times. Rest of the black congressmen, they were running and hide in the closet. They see me coming. And that is a sad indictment that they don't represent the people who put them in office.
All right, 800-450-7876. As we promised, Alberta's calling us from Atlanta on line 3. Alberta, you're on with Dr. Anderson.
I really can't thank you enough, Carl, for the menu of all your psychological liberation guests that you have. And Dr. Anderson, I want to share with you real quickly that I bought 2 of your books and shared with one of my friends, and it was stamped University of Texas, property of University of Texas. So somebody's using your books. Can you agree? This is what I want to ask you, though. Would you put a face on so-called white supremacists as European domination? And then in addition to that, Dr. Anderson, well, as long as the Dred Scott decision is not overturned, would you agree that black lives do not matter and cannot under the law of the Constitution? In addition to that, why do we still pay taxation to govern our massive extermination? And we may make a difference. Are you still willing to represent us in terms of whatever it is? And would you agree that we should have 100 acres of millions of land to honor Dr. Martin Luther King and the honor of Elijah Muhammad.
Yeah, you put a lot on his plate, Albert. I thank you for your call, Doc.
Yeah, I'm not sure. She asked me quite a few things. I'm not sure which one, but in terms of representation, now black folk can any time they can almost make an issue out of not paying taxes. They simply just go back and set up a special quasi corporation and put their money, instead of paying taxes, put their money into a special thing and say, and they pay the tax, but pay it to a quasi private corporation. Say our money's in here, and until we get appropriate representation, we're going to hold that money, even though we paid the taxes, because nobody represents black folk in this country. Not going to do it because black folk don't stand up. Black folk will roll over, play dead. I don't care who comes along.
800-450-7876. Jeanette's calling us from Louisiana. Jeanette, you're on Dr. Anderson.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Nelson, for taking my call. And Dr. Anderson, it's a pleasure to be on the phone with you and obtain the knowledge that you're giving out. Can you elaborate on the fact that the two candidates that we have for president, it's like choosing between two devils, and we shouldn't have to choose between two devils. What do you think about not voting or voting for someone else? Because it's very, very hard to vote for Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. It's whole nother issue. And also, can you tell me, do you recommend that the community, blacks in the community coming together, going into business and putting their money into black banks, do you actually promote that, which I know you do? But how many years do you see long term that we need to do that in order to support each other in order for it to make a difference? Thank you very much.
Okay, let me see if I got time to answer your first one about voting and what black folks should have been doing years ago. Is you need to set up a practice of saying, demanding that every elected official, every party who's seeking to be an elected official, should come to your neighborhood, to your community. Once you set up your communities, and come before all the black folk, and you should give them all of them about 5 minutes at max, and say, I want you to come before us and tell us exactly, specifically, what you're going to do for black folk. Don't come here and tell us what you're going to do for the larger communities, what you're going to, all the world's problems. I don't want to hear about it. What are you going to specifically deliver to black folk in your term in office? And that's the first thing. And secondly, we want you to pledge to come back before us at midway your term and give us a report on what you've delivered to the black community in tangible, measurable terms. Anything that you don't deliver that we cannot measure or count or take to the bank, we don't need it, don't want it. That's what you do with it. Secondly, thirdly, you should tell them that what black folks are going to do in this country is to withdraw from all public parties, to withdraw from the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Neither party has ever done anything specifically and solely for black folk. Why? Because partisanship was never the issue. When black folk were enslaved, they belonged to any party. Nobody did anything for them. From about 1866 up to about 1944, 45, black folk belonged to the Republican Party. They got re-enslaved to Jim Crow segregation. Nobody did anything for them. And from about 1950 up to now, to 2016, they belong to the Democratic Party. Nobody's done anything for them. So partisanship is not the issue. So white folk will switch parties at the drop of a hat. They go for whoever they think they're going to get the benefits from. So what black folks should do is withdraw from both political parties and set up their own national political party. And in that, when they set up that political party, say, we're not going to run not one single candidate. We don't want a candidate. But we're going to vote as a solid block nationally. We're going to vote 43 million strong. Black folk will become the most powerful people in this country if they were to withdraw from both political parties and quit listening to these silly, non-knowledgeable people about politics talking about, well, you need to split your vote between both parties. That's the worst thing you can do. Never split up. Never divide yourself. You've already been conquered. Don't divide yourself and conquered. You're already a minority. You stay together as a block, as a minority block, and because you're the only programmed permanent minority in the society based on the immigration laws. And tell the society, we're going to have a black independent party, point one. Point two, you're going to vote solidly as 43 million black folk. And point three, you will pledge your support and vote for whoever promises the most and deliver to black folk. Irrespective of color. It can be a white person, a green person, a polka dot, a chartreuse, whatever you want. Just say, I don't care what your color is. It doesn't have to be a black party. We don't want to run any candidate. Don't run any candidates, but you advertise. And I guarantee you, once you advertise that a candidate, any candidate can get 43 million black votes just by simply promising and coming to the black community, you would get all kinds of benefits. It's like being a beautiful woman advertised. I will go marry whoever shows up the most to my front door. That's what you should do, and quit letting people trick you by asking you, well, why don't you pick the lesser of two evils? You said, no, I don't want either one of the evils. Don't say, well, do you want your throat cut? Do you want to get shot in the head? I don't want either one. You said, you tell people, come to us and promise and deliver, and we're going to hold you accountable and give us a contract. And I've told blacks repeatedly, I would come out of retirement and tell the country, right now, I would represent black Americans. I got a list of things I want the Democratic or the Republican Party to do for black folk and public policies across this nation. I got about 5 or 6 things I want black folk to get. I would represent black folk, and I would deliver to either the Republican Party or the Democratic Party millions of black votes. If they would commit a contract to deliver these resources, I want tangible resources to the black communities across America, I would get them millions of black votes. And the last thing you need to know is that right now the Democratic Party cannot win an election unless they get 90% of the black vote. And if you're going to give somebody 90% of your vote, you damn sure better be out there asking for benefits, measurable benefits. If you can't measure it, don't go for any symbolism. I don't want nobody's birthday and all that kind of stuff. I want things that black folk can take to the bank. I got a whole list of things in the Powernomics Principles, and you can go to my website. We would get the black vote. We would deliver the black vote. We would get tangible benefits based on creating a black independent party across America.
All right, let me ask you this, Doc. Well, what do we do about, quote unquote, our so-called leaders? Neely Fuller says, you know who they are, the usual suspects. What do we do? Because everything that you're saying, they're going to do counter. So what do we do with them?
First of all, I would totally ignore them. Totally ignore them, because right now you don't have any black leaders. By definition, there are no black leaders in America. You don't have any black leaders. There is no such animal. That's like saying, what do you do with the wind? And you can't even see the wind. They don't do anything. They don't create anything. And a leader, by definition, is an individual who's done a comprehensive analysis of a group of people's a dilemma, and then out of that they've structured some very concrete, specific, measurable things that black people can do to improve the quality of life for themselves. They come up with a national plan, a blueprint, a roadmap, saying if we do these things, we can go from here to there. I am not aware of any black person in America, a so-called black leader, with the exception of maybe my plans, that says, here's our dilemma, black labor, white wealth, and what it is where in the history of it. And here's the plan, Powernomics, the national plan, to move blacks from point 0 to maybe 10 or 20 or 40 down the line. That's the only plan I'm aware of. And so I don't want to be a black leader. I'm black.
Right. Hang on a second, Doc. I'll let you finish up on the black leadership on the other side, but we've got to take our last break. 800-450-7876 to speak to Dr. Anderson. Your call's next as the big show rolls on from 1450 WOL, where information is power. And thank you for staying with us. And our guest, the man with a plan, that's what we like to call him, Dr. Claud Anderson. Again, the number to call to speak to Dr. Anderson, 800-450-7876. I want to remind you, tell your friends, David Banner, rapper turned actor and now activist, is going to be here before the end of the week. Also, social activist Dick Gregory is going to show up as well. He wants to talk about the demise of Dr. Sabi, also what's going on in Milwaukee, and also Marcus Garvey. Wednesday is Marcus Garvey's birthday, actually. 800-450-7876 to speak to Dr. Anderson. Doc, I'm going to let you finish up your response to what we should do to our quote-unquote so-called leaders. We'll take some calls for you.
Okay, very good. And tell them again, if you want, you need to go to powernomics.com and order those books. Power, POWERNOMICS.com, and order a Power Pack for $70. It'll give you a lot of this material. And secondly, what I want you to understand is don't let people in these major cities like Baltimore, Milwaukee, and Ferguson trick you. They always want to focus on the insignificant, the major, and the minors. Your problem in those cities has nothing to do with the symptoms that they always talk about, where black folk don't have jobs, they don't have this, is the high unrate, the drug abuse, the teenage pregnancy, the gangs, and all that. Those are symptoms of your problem. They start talking about unemployment. They always want to say, well, we can solve all these problems by if we can reduce the unemployment rate. But even the unemployment rate they give you, they always talk about black unemployment rate is only double that of white. That's a lie. The black unemployment rate in those cities, like Baltimore, for example, the unemployment rate in Baltimore is way past what they're talking about. The unemployment rate in Baltimore nationally was 35% about 10 years ago for blacks nationally, and in Detroit was 48%. In Baltimore was 48%. In Pittsburgh is 49%. In New York was 50%. Now all the unemployment rates over 50%. And white folks are talking about, what we need to do is get more jobs. But black folks don't need jobs. more than they need something else. What black folk need is money, wealth, money, and businesses, and let them produce their own jobs. We spend too much time trying to give black folks jobs. Blacks cannot acquire wealth by getting a job. A job is not designed to increase the wealth disparities in this country. And the wealth disparity in the last 10 years in this country went up 85% in the last 10 years for whites, between blacks and whites. And the blacks don't own enough of wealth to be a competitive people. You cannot get enrichment by owning a job. A job is designed to keep you 1 week away from welfare, food stamps, and unemployment lines. That's in Baltimore, Milwaukee, and any place else. And the problem in those cities is that they do not own it. They do not have enough wealth to be able to build businesses. The banks won't even lend them the money because they don't have any collateral. You can't have collateral unless you got some wealth to be able to use capital to put it up against. And so in those cities, black folks don't have enough businesses. I spoke in Baltimore last week and Milwaukee about 3 or 4 weeks ago. They don't have enough employment opportunities. They don't have any businesses. And yet all those groups in Milwaukee, the whites, the Asians, the Hispanics, and all the other groups are doing extremely well in Milwaukee and in Baltimore, Ferguson, and every place else. But nobody wants to go in there and say, rather than, don't try to create jobs for black folks, go in and give start black businesses, industrialize those areas for black folks, not for minorities, not for poor people, not for Asian, Hispanics, and Arabs, but for black folks. And so those black folks have become independent and self-sufficient and started competing in those cities in Milwaukee. Milwaukee is about as bad as Mississippi in terms of what they own in terms of businesses and income. And even the few blacks up there who are very prominent in the city. When I was there, most of the biggest churches, they didn't identify with the problems of the black community. They were identifying with the mayor and the power structure downtown. You got to start holding these people accountable. And the way you hold them accountable is get your wealth and power. Tell them you want money in Baltimore. Baltimore, again, is about a 63% black city. Again, and in that city, 99 to 100% of all the businesses are owned by whites. Blacks don't own any businesses there. That's why they're running around looting. And they got the mayor who should be saying, let's industrialize this city in the name of black folk and put businesses, set up redevelopment loan situations, create some industrialized banks here, had the federal government to start development banks in there so blacks can go down and borrow money, long-term money on revolving loan at a very low interest rate that support them and enable to banks. That's what they should be doing and help black folk build businesses in Baltimore and then also in Ferguson. But they won't do it. What they want to do is tell you about, we just give them some jobs. The second thing they do is say black folk need more education. Black folk right now hold the record in America for the greatest academic achievement in education on this earth. They always talk about, black folk are not smart enough. Black folk don't have a good education. Well, if they don't have it, they didn't get it because they were denied an education for 360 years. It's against the law to teach a black person to read and write. But black folk came out of slavery in 1866, where 96% of the black folk in 1866 could not read and write. But in 30 years, while they're bringing in 30 million immigrants into this country, white immigrants in this country, black folk came out in that 30-year time, self-educated themselves, reduced their literacy rate down to about 42%. And yet, but they never got the educational benefits. Because when the immigrants came in this country, there were 30 million immigrants came in between 1866 and 1896. The whites gave all the business opportunities and the money and wealth to whites coming in from Europe. And black folks had the highest achievement rate, but didn't get any benefits for getting the education. The same thing is still true. That's why in 1950, a black man with a college education could not make only half as much as a white high school dropout. But don't let them trick you, in other words, by talking about the problem can be resolved if we start focusing on jobs or on education. What they need to focus on is putting money, wealth, and businesses into those black communities and put businesses in black folks' hands, set up entrepreneurial training centers where black folk can learn how to operate businesses and bring back some of these industries that this country gave to third world countries, like the shoe industry and the clothing industry, so black folk can get that, and also have fewer blacks going to college and have them start learning technical skills in the public schools, so that no black kid is going to graduate from a high school unless he has a skill in his hand or a scheme in his head. Make the last 2 years in high school where they learn special skills like refrigeration and mechanics and plumbing and how to build businesses and stuff. We got to go back and quit letting them talk about getting you jobs. Create your own jobs. Teach black folk how to produce jobs rather than look for jobs, Carl.
800-450-7876. Sandra's in D.C. line for it. Sandra?
Hi, Carl. Hi, Dr. Anderson.
Hi.
I bought your book, Powernomics. I haven't gotten into it yet, but I bought it. Okay, you say we keep 3% of our wealth in our own community.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you think that larger community will one day try to target that 3% of our wealth and try to one day get 100% of our wealth?
I'm sorry, say it to me again so I can hear it.
Do you think the larger community would try to target that 3% of the wealth we keep in our community and finally get 100% of our wealth?
Do you think they would try to get it?
Yeah, try to target that 3% we keep in our own community.
Oh, yeah, they're going to do that. They're going to compete with you. Yes. Right now you got 100%, but guess what? Right now you're allowing other groups to outdo you. You're not competing. Right now the whites, for instance, in America, the whites right now are living off of 2 incomes. They're living off 2 incomes. That's why they're kicking your rear ends all over the country. They're living off of 2. They live off of 100% of their money and 97% of black folks' money, because black folks go around and give it to them. And you don't have any money in your community because they're boycotting your community. No white person in their right mind is going to get in a car on a Saturday morning, drive down to a black neighborhood, to a black business, and buy something that black folk are producing and selling. They're going to boycott you. But right now, as soon as you get off this phone, you go out to any mall or any community, and whether it's a Hispanic community, Asian community, Arab community, and black folk are lining up trying to get into stores that are owned by other groups and giving them their money. And you're not going to see the Arabs and Asians come into the black community.
And our black leadership, they're integrationists. They're integrationists. That's our problem. Our black leadership is integrationists.
Well, that's right, because they pretend they don't know that integration is a weakening process. You can't integrate. You can't strengthen something by integrating. If I gave you a cup of black coffee right now and you started integrating milk into it, you think that's going to make that coffee stronger?
All right, then, Sandra, thank you for your call. 800-450-7876. Gene's with us, also calling from the district on line 1. Gene, you're on with Dr. Anderson.
Thank you. Dr. Anderson, I have one question or two based on what you've been saying about us getting ourselves together for 1 million people to leverage our vote. I'm sure you're familiar with I Am One of the Million, being spearheaded by Dr. James Kleeman. If in fact we can we got another 4 years, get our people to come in and come into the 1 million. If we do that and you represent us, we can get started. Don't you think that would be the best? That's the best movement I've heard really lately about getting involved like that. What do you think about that movement and how you could represent it?
Well, I think the world of them. Because I know the leaders, as Amafika and also Jim Kleeman. They're on target and doing the best they can, and they're doing well across the country. And as I said, I've been so embroiled in my own problems right now with I got some health challenges and trying to get some of my own economic straight on stuff I'm doing in businesses and stuff, that I have not been able to get out and represent anybody. And because until I get myself straight, I don't want to try to represent somebody else that may be a damage or make them vulnerable for some of the stuff I'm fighting to get out of. But I do support them in all respects as friends and as committed, dedicated, conscious black people, and they know that. So, and what I want them to do, as a matter of fact, I just got a letter from Amafika just the other day, and what he wants to do is try to hold a conference. And if you talk to him, tell him I'm supportive of that. I'm trying to find out how we can do it. We're going to have a press conference downtown in Washington, D.C. at the press building, announcing that they're going to all across America, all 43 million black folk are going to fall out and hit the streets now and support the enforcement, the mandated treaties of the 1866 Indian treaties, where black across America, black freedmen and black Indians should have gotten hundreds of billions of dollars over the last years. And we're going to take it back to where it's supposed to be as a political issue. They want to hold a press conference. You tell them I'm supportive of it. And I just got to find out from our chairman for the Harvest Institute board how we can plan and pull it together. And I'm going to pull key blacks across the country and bring in some black Indians as I've done before. Every time I've done that, I've brought blacks to the black Indians and black freedmen to the Washington, D.C. at my own expense, paid for the airline tickets, their hotels, their food, and the limousine service, and put $100 in their pocket for spending money. I don't have the money anymore. I spend all my money. I'm right now just right at the borderline of being almost going bankrupt. So I'm trying to help black folk in the country. Not one black with money, as I told Carl earlier, not one black who's supposed to be so endowed with money has ever given one single penny to Harvest Institute or provided anything for me to help me carry this load now for almost 30-something years. I've been doing it by myself with a few blacks the poor blacks in the country have been sending in nickels and dimes and dollars, and I appreciate that, and I need it desperately, and I appreciate them and love them. But what we really need is big money. I'm running against 5,000 white think tanks, and our budget is so small. I guess in the last year our total budget for going all over this country and with lawsuits and newsletters, our income was only something like about $15,000 or $16,000. While the people we're running against the white think tanks, they're running something like I don't know, $500 million, and got about 500 employees and $500 million. I got about 2 people, and we run about $15,000 to $16,000 or $17,000, $18,000 worth of operating capital. So I can't do any more than what I've been doing, but I do love and respect them and appreciate them, and I am going to try to see if we can pull off a press conference in support of the 1866 Indian treaties and the suit against the United States government, even though we can't get any help out of the White House or the Department of Justice. And every time I go to court, the Department of Justice sends over 9 lawyers against me and my lawyer, and even though we got a white attorney general and a white president and a white man in the Supreme Court.
Right, Doc, we're running out of time. So how can folks help the Harvest Institute? How can they pick up your books?
Well, they can get my books by going to the website, Powernomics website, POWERNOMICS, Powernomics.com, and order the Power Pack. $70 Power Pack and get all 4 books. We can send that to them overnight, or they can go to call the main office. The Powernomics Corporation office number is 301-564-6075, and they can get them there. And they can go to the website for the Harvest Institute, harvestinstitute.org, and they can pick up all the information they want off there and make contributions on the PayPal to the Harvest Institute to help us subsidize these Indian lawsuits.
Right. We're out of here, Doc. I thank you. Folks, stay strong, stay positive, stay in the light. We'll see you tomorrow at 4 o'clock right here on 1450 WOL, where information is power.